Okay, so you're like walking down the street, right? And your phone, totally charged. Not because you stopped for coffee and plugged in, but because the sidewalk itself is pumping out electricity. Sounds kind of wild, doesn't it? Straight out of sci-fi. But that futuristic scenario, that's what Cascade Catalysts is hinting at with their Vibronix Energy tech. And now you'll want to know if this is the real deal or just hype. You know me, always up for a deep dive into the next big energy thing. So what I'm getting so far is this. Vibronix Energy tech is about harnessing energy that's already all around us, just going to waste. Like heat, wind, even vibrations from traffic. Turning that stuff into electricity we can actually use. But how do you even begin to capture energy from something as intangible as a vibration? It's a really cool concept when you think about it. The basic idea behind Vibronix is that at the molecular level, everything's in motion, constantly vibrating. And those vibrations, they've got a surprising amount of energy packed into them. What Cascade Catalysts says is they've cracked the code on capturing that energy and converting it into electricity. I'm really intrigued, but my brain needs a little convincing here. It's not like we can just plug our phone charger into the ground and juice up, can we? Wouldn't that be something? Unfortunately, it's not quite that simple, although it'd be amazing. This is where the science gets really interesting. So Vibronix Energy technology, let's call it VET for short, it's based on a few well-established principles to start. Things like the piezoelectric effect, for example. You've probably seen this effect in action many times without even realizing it. You know those lighters, the ones that make a spark when you press the button? That's the piezoelectric effect right there. Certain materials, crystals for example, they generate an electric charge when you apply pressure to them. Vibronix takes that concept and kind of runs with it. So they're essentially using pressure to create energy. They're also using something called the Jahn-Teller effect. This explains how energy can be stored at the molecular level. Like imagine a whole bunch of tiny springs all holding a little bit of energy. What Cascade Catalysts claims is that they've found a way to release and capture that stored energy. They're like combining these existing scientific ideas with their own discoveries, then given their own fancy name to it. They call it the excited excitonic effect. Catchy, right? Basically, think of these excited excitons like supercharged batteries, but like tiny. Each one grabbing a bit of energy from vibrations. And then, through something they call the quantum catalytic effect, they amplify that energy to make it usable on a larger scale. Yes, I just said quantum. Things are now getting real. Definitely cutting-edge stuff. But here's the really cool part. And what might make this a game changer? That special catalyst they've cooked up. The heart of Vibronix or VET. It doesn't need any of those rare expensive materials. You know, like precious metals and rare earth elements. Those can be an environmental nightmare to mine. So if they figured out a way to generate energy efficiently without relying on those environmentally damaging practices, I mean, we could be talking about a total revolution in renewable energy. This is huge, but let's slow down for a sec. We're throwing around some pretty complex science here. Let's unpack this whole quantum catalytic effect thing a bit more. How does it actually work? Okay, picture this. You're shining a light through a magnifying glass. Okay, the light itself, it doesn't change. But the lens, what does it do? It concentrates it. You get that focal point with like amplified energy. That's basically what this catalyst does, but for vibrations. It's like a magnifying glass for all those tiny energy sources. It amplifies their effect, makes them usable. So instead of all those micro vibrations just, I don't know, disappearing into thin air, we're talking about capturing them, turning them into energy we can actually use. It's like we've been blind to this whole invisible world of energy potential just buzzing around us all the time. And the applications, pretty mind-blowing when you start to really think about it. Like one of the most exciting things, retrofitting existing infrastructure. We're talking about coating buildings, bridges, even roads with this catalyst. Suddenly, all those structures, they're not just sitting there, they're generating their own power. Power from wind, traffic, even just people walking on them. All those vibrations. So you're saying those tiny vibrations that engineers usually try to dampen, those could actually be an energy source. That's like a total paradigm shift. We're talking about buildings that don't just consume energy, they contribute to the grid. Maybe even become energy independent. And it's not just big structures either. Think about smaller applications. In fact, Cascade Catalysts, they're already working with this group, Conflow Power Group. They're putting their technology into these smart streetlights. They call them I-lamps. They use vibrations from cars driving by to power the streetlights. Pretty cool, right? So we're talking about taking something like traffic, which is usually a pain, and turning it into a resource. It's a perfect example of how Vibronix could help create these sustainable, energy-independent cities. And it doesn't stop there. They can boost solar panel efficiency too. So, instead of just relying on sunlight, which, let's face it, isn't always reliable. Think cloudy days, nighttime. We're talking about solar panels that are pulling in energy from ambient vibrations 24/7 on top of the sunlight. Imagine how much more efficient solar energy could be. But isn't this starting to sound a little too good to be true? Buildings powering themselves, turbocharged solar panels, even electric cars that recharge themselves. Aren't we getting a little carried away here? Is there any reason for a little healthy skepticism? Part of me is already picturing a future where everything's powered by good vibes only. But the other part, the skeptical side, wants some proof, some cold hard data. And that seems fair. Gotta balance the excitement with a little reality check, right? Especially with new tech. So yeah, Vibronix, it's definitely got some buzz. Even got some serious cash thrown at it. Over $2 million in private investments. Plus, they snagged another $650,000 in grants from the Canadian government. So somebody important believes in this. But the research, it's still going. We need to see, how it actually performs in the real world. See if it's really as efficient as they say, if it can actually scale up. So the million-dollar question is, can it actually deliver? Can it go from a cool idea to something that actually powers our lives? And it all comes back to that. Remember we talked about it earlier, that whole catalysis thing. Catalysts, kind of a behind-the-scenes player, right? But with tons of potential. Catalysts are like the unsung heroes of a million different industrial processes. Just quietly doing their thing, speeding up reactions, making stuff happen. But it also seems like there's still a lot we don't even know about them. It's like, yeah, we can use them. We can even create new ones. But it's almost like we don't always get how that magic works. And that's what makes this company Cascade Catalysts so interesting. They're not just tinkering around the edges. They're going deep, pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible with catalysts. Instead of just playing the same old song, they're writing a whole new one. And if they're right, if this quantum catalytic effect is the real deal, if they've figured out how to supercharge energy generation at this super basic level. This could be way bigger than just Vibronix. We could be talking about changing entire industries. That's a seriously mind-blowing thought. But even if we just stick with energy for a second, this whole idea, it kind of turns everything we thought we knew about energy on its head. We're so used to thinking about energy in terms of these huge power plants, these massive wind farms, solar arrays, all that. It's like, what if energy isn't something we have to extract, refine, all that? What if it's just like, part of our world? Just silently and sustainably powering everything we do? That'd be pretty incredible, right? And not just for the planet, but think about it. We'd be so much more resilient if we weren't all relying on like this big, fragile power grid. Imagine communities, even individual homes, generating their own power, taking care of their own needs. It's a pretty exciting idea. And it makes you wonder about the future of energy policy too. Like, remember those government plans? The ones where they want to mandate those expensive heat pumps and solar panels. But what if, and stick with me here, what if Vibronix actually works the way they say? If we're talking about buildings generating their own power, using energy that's already there, do those mandates even make sense anymore? It kind of throws a wrench in things, doesn't it? In a good way. It makes you question what you thought you knew. This whole deep dive into Vibronix energy technology has been quite a trip. We started with tiny little vibrating molecules and ended up talking about the future of, well, everything. I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the future. It's these kinds of big leaps in innovation that really have the potential to change the world. Maybe one day we'll look back and wonder what all the fuss was about. Like, remember when we thought getting energy was hard? Until then, we'll keep an eye on things and let you know about any other cool discoveries we stumble across. And in the meantime, we want to hear from you. What do you think about all this? Does Vibronix and VET get you fired up? Or are you more like, I'll believe it when I see it? Let us know.